Because all of this data is great as a macro picture, but we've been actually on the ground. We've been investing, we've been continuing to build our community, and we've seen a lot of stuff. Talking to founders, talking to LPs, talking to investors, talking to fellow co-investors, talking to institutions. And like just after this webinar today, I'm heading for dinner about defense investing, which will feature both funds and stakeholders. And this is not the first time that these things have been organized. And it's very interesting to see that finally there is attention, practical attention from the three sides, the founders, the investors, and the institution side. And in this capacity, what 2020 has been like? Well, of course, we launched our fund, which was an interesting milestone considering the market. And initially felt like this, but soon you realize that it's more like this. And because, of course, the launch of a fund doesn't mean that you've completed the race, you need to continue to raise. It also means that you're now responsible for other people's funds. So you're not just angel investing with your own capital, you're a fund manager and you start to have a bit of a team around you. So it's a bit like building a company. And so the challenge really only starts once you get your first round of capital that gets you going. Pre-launch and in Q1, we started out as the out of fashion, as the underdogs, because remember, this whole now surprise deep tech is here is something that some people have been predicting, we as one of them, but it wasn't obvious as early as January this year. But that helps because for the last 2 years, it's actually 2.5 years, and including this year, what I've been able to achieve for the fund and for myself in terms of establishing us as a deep tech hub on the community side and also a voice for the deep tech community is probably unthinkable if you just want to launch the same thing in general tech, because everybody else is doing that and has been doing it for years. So we actually, in a way, even though we disagree with that, we found that the fact that it was a niche and it was something that nobody wanted to touch, something that gave us a way to just build a strong brand from the get-going. And it might have been because of the engineering backgrounds that we all have, and not just me, but also the rest of the team, and how that relates to founders who are engineers and scientists and are building companies and that were historically misunderstood by the finance-driven investor class. But also because we could see where deep tech was heading. And so we were just preparing. We thought we were just shouting out the obvious. It wasn't really obvious, actually, and every day you second guess yourself whether you're really right. And you're not really going to know in the investment world until 10 years down the line when the results come back. But it is something that we sensed. And as data does come in through the 10 years, so far, it's proving the thesis correct. And it's proving that that market data that we're seeing this year is not coming out of nowhere. It's coming out of, for example, the fact that there, like I said, deep tech unicorns had started to pop up here and there and had started to make headlines, even in Europe, let alone in the US, where, well, of course, we've taken SpaceX as the perfect representation of how far a deep tech company can go into becoming a force, not just for tech and not just returning to investors, but also in affecting the world. Atoms rather than bits, as they say. And software capital efficiency was already a myth. That's something that we knew. That's the word there. It's something that if you've looked at data like this one from Harvard Business School, you would have noticed that after effectively an increase in efficiency, everything is cheaper and cheaper to build. Everybody's a founder. Everything is great, especially in the US. Actually, it's been a decade. It's been a decade that doesn't hold true. If you projected that, forward, what it means is that finally we need to start to think about what comes next. It's been so easy to build companies, and in fact, it's become so easy that now competition and dollars into competition means that it's harder to get capital efficiency. Even if it's cheap to build, competition makes it harder to scale. And so suddenly we need to rethink about what's going to power the next boom, because this boom is ending. We've been using this slide since 2021, and it's an adaptation from a 2020 slide. This is how long, even before we were a fund from the community and from my personal angel investing, we've been saying this is going to pop and you need to think about what comes next. And of course, every cycle needs a new infrastructure, which for us, again, thinking 2020, 2021, has always meant deep tech. And deep tech simply has the meaning of an inevitable swing back to building technologies, which is not only defensible, but also is fundamental, as opposed to a nice to have that anybody around the world can just go and copy if you had the head start. just because there's nothing fundamental and breakthrough about the tech. It's just about the business model and then how fast you can scale and then the marketing around you and who is got the biggest VC behind. Now, I see it's actually a good person for it. How do you define it? Great. Well, actually, exactly how I'm defining it now. Something that is a combination of what I'm saying now and the slide before on the type of company. Something that is hard to build fundamentally and that doesn't necessarily have, and because of the hard to build, it has a moat, which means there is less competition around, but that is fundamentally needed in any, and maybe the particular implementation that you're trying to create will not be the final one that the market will use, but one form of that solution will need to exist. For instance, to make it a practical example, right now, and we'll see it later, we know that the demand for compute power is increasing exponentially, and we know that Moore's law is ending. Therefore, new form of computing are needed. Now, NVIDIA right now, and ASML and a few other companies that had managed to build the semiconductor companies against the grain of the last 20, 30 years, or perhaps also in a couple of these specific cases because they had started just before, they now enjoy the fact that they're just being kings. However, the demand is so large that they cannot sustain it themselves, and therefore opportunities are now becoming more and more evident. Now, how you go and create a solution for it doesn't necessarily, is not exactly straightforward, and there will be some different approaches, and not necessarily yours will win. But a deep tech company is one that doesn't shy away from that challenge, doesn't wait for OpenAI to release ChatGPT or GPT API to build an LLM-based tech platform, is trying to think about, now that OpenAI is maybe perhaps plateauing with Google, is becoming a war of optimization, how can we build the next leap in AI? What would it be based on? Is it going to be based on some other research, like OpenAI took the large language models from Google research from 2017 and readapted it and changed it, put lots of data to it? What's it going to be like? That to me is deep tech. And it comes at the end, the need for deep tech, a period of easy tech money. Like I said, it was the grain, it was the current, because in a way it was a template. And so why not? Why not take advantage of it? There were parameters to know where an app would scale and start to decrease your risk by edging your bets on a bunch of people and founders and apps and techs. That seemed fairly straightforward to predict on a larger portfolio base. But we dare to ask how many of these apps will be the next Amazons and Googles, rather than the Webvans or Boo.coms or Pet.coms that disappeared after the last boom and bust. And already on a blog that I had started in 2021 and that I published in 2022, a brave startup, new startup, what is coming. This particular quote is something that I was asking. It's something that's been with us, with our community. If you've been to any of our events for the last 4, 5, 6 years, and that we've been asking from whenever